Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. I can get started with, oh, excellent. Thank you, Nancy, and welcome from Atlanta. We can get started with just some housekeeping items as we have folks still piling in. Thanks again for being here today. I'm super excited to be here with my friends, Sean and Ross. Sean is here on the Asset Map team. And Sean, is this our first time doing a webinar together?
I think it's the first time we're doing one.
That's
It's crazy. 4 years in, and we haven't done one of these. I'm
very
excited.
exciting. And we also have Ross Riskin here with us today, who's the CEO and founder of visiWealth. Hi, Ross.
Hey guys, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Again, we're going to get kicked off. We are recording today's session. So if you are having to jump off early, or if you have colleagues or friends who you think would really get a lot of benefit from this webinar, it will be posted. We will make sure it's accessible on the Asset Map page, and certainly Ross will do the same. So if you have anybody who would like to check it out post-event, we will absolutely make it available. And thanks to you who are joining live. Also, questions are super, super encouraged. We like this to be interactive. Our stencils that we've worked on here at Asset Map and that we've collaborated on with Ross have become a bit of a viral sensation over at Asset Map, and we're really having a great time talking about how it can not only deepen your conversations with your clients and prospects, but also save you time, which we all love, and educate folks along the way. And we're going to find out how that is happening with not only the visiWealth stencil, but stencils in general over at Asset Map. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. Please, like I said, you have already figured out how to use the chat and the Q&A capabilities here in Zoom. So as we go along and you see something you want to find out more about, please let us know. And we'd be happy to expand on that as we get going in the conversational piece of this webinar. I am Alison Susko, Vice President of Community here at Asset Map, and I'm just going to take a couple minutes to level set a bit on Asset Map and what we're all about, and then I'm going to pass it on to Sean and Ross to really dig into the stencil capability. So let's get going. Just a couple minutes, couple slides to, again, give you some context on Asset Map if you're new to the system. So we are a financial planning, advice engagement, visualization platform. We are really going to help your clients visualize what they have going on financially. And, we've all heard the phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We also believe that a picture's worth 1,000 decisions, really keeping your clients engaged in the process, not overwhelmed, and being able to make really timely and educated decisions along with you, their financial professional. And we're going to tell you a little bit how. So I am lucky very frequently to talk to a lot of both our subscribers at Asset Map and also potentially financial professionals who are looking into kind of solving some of the problems that a lot of firms are having. And it really kind of resonates across the board. A couple of them being, first, time to credibility. Make your initial meetings, almost that first meeting that you're having with your prospect and client, really valuable right from the start. That's super, super important because, we don't want to waste any time. We don't want to take until the third or fourth meeting until we're having really valuable conversations with our clients and prospects. And Asset Map is going to help you get to that credibility a little bit faster. And even using stencils is really going to support that, which you'll see today. Complexity of deliverables. I think this might be my favorite of the three kind of problems that financial professionals are facing. As an industry, I think over the past few years, we've really been able to solve the most complex cases, right? So financial planning platforms and all kinds of technology can really do the most. It can really find solutions for the most complex households and clients. But a lot of times the deliverables that come from that are just complex, they're confusing, and nobody wants to read a 75-page report. And, being able to simplify that, make it concise, but also super valuable is something that folks are really after these days. And also scaling advice. We have some, decent sized book of business that we hear from our different advisors. So whether you're supporting 100 clients or a couple of hundred clients, you really want to be able to provide valuable advice to all of them, not just those A clients or the top clients that might have that complexity that you tend to focus on. Using Asset Map is going to allow you to provide great advice and have, really good, profitable conversations with all of your clients in a timely manner, not just the ones that, potentially demand the most complexity. We really find that Asset Map is going to pop up in, kind of those moments of opportunity, we call them, with your clients. So, this is going to make a lot of sense to you. Those initial conversations, get to a place of really good fact finding and finding out what's important to those folks before they even come in for that first meeting, so that you're off and running. And again, you're having that valuable conversation, really before, you even know a whole ton about them. And we're going to support that in ways like digital fact finders that clients are really able to resonate with. And of course, again, the stencils that we're going to be focusing on today. Another point of opportunity that we feel like it's great to have that visual layer to discuss what's going on with a family is recommendations and advice. So going back to that complexity of deliverables, if you're offering up, kind of charts and graphs and things that might be a little too complex to keep that client engaged in that decision-making process, that can really halt the conversation. So bringing up that visualization, that asset map report in this case, to talk about what's most important when you're making a recommendation can really keep the client on track. And of course, also ongoing engagement, annual reviews, semi-annual reviews, whatever that kind of timing is that you're meeting with your clients, bring that up to level set. Hey, how does this look compared to the last time we met? Well, looks great, but my spouse is still in the medical field, but she has since, had a promotion, and we want to reflect that on the map. When someone is seeing what is representative of their life, they're going to end up uncovering not only opportunities for you as the advisor, but make sure everything is super accurate and up to date. A couple cool stats to share with you, and then we're going to jump into it. We're finding that advisors that are using Asset Map, as opposed to their peers who aren't, are actually having 43% higher annual revenue because of the advice conversation, making things simple, and again, allowing those clients to make really great decisions based on the visualization that we're using in Asset Map. How about speed? We love to speed things up a little bit, make things super valuable, but also taking that complex topic of financial planning and making it easier to understand, allowing the client to make faster decisions and again, stay on track for the conversation without being confused, because we all know a confused mind doesn't buy. And finally, trust. We want to get the clients and prospects to a place of trusting the firm that they're working with as quickly as possible. And, again, with clarity comes understanding, which leads to engagement, and again, great decision making, which is really allowing you to also work with more folks in a more cost-effective manner. So let's touch on a few of our features so that you know what we're all about. And I'm going to skip right over. Oh, geez, I lost it. I'm going to pop this back up. It was animating without me even liking it. So let me, real quick, I'm sorry about that, guys. My animations were off, so it's probably going to do it again. But we're going to try to jump to this screen and talk a little bit about, it's going to stay. A few of our great features. Oh, it's gone again. I apologize. I'm just going to jump over to Sean and talk for a second about some of the things that we use to, again, get to that place of trust, to get to that place of clarity with our clients. So I'm going to stop sharing and talk about a couple direct to client fact finders. We have our discovery process that is going to allow your clients to tell you a little bit more about them before they even come in for that first meeting. So a direct to client fact finder that's going to actually pre-populate the asset map report that Sean has up right now, so that you know what's most important to them to bring up in that first meeting, whether they've become your clients yet or not. Things like stencils and signals. Signals I'll touch on for a second, and thank you, Sean, for jumping over. What are some of the roadblocks that could happen in a client's financial life that could really kind of set everything sideways? There are algorithms built into Asset Map to go out and actually say, based on what we know about this client, there could be some issues that could pop up that could really become a bit of a financial problem and keep them from meeting their goals. So it's very much a red light, yellow light, green light approach. You can see we have some red here for this household because it isn't super built out yet. But it's, again, taking what's in that asset map report and saying to the advisor or their staff, it might be really good to have some conversations with this potential client about loss of life or potentially a longevity issue. Looks like liquidity might be in a little bit of a better spot, but it still might be worth bringing up. We don't have anything green here, but that might let us know that they're actually in a really good spot with some of these topics. So it's a nice way, again, to either look at an individual client or your entire book of business in Asset Map and see at a click, at a glance, what may be a great conversation piece or a reason to reach out for an additional meeting. And finally, let's touch on target maps before we jump into stencils that Sean is really going to take over. And target maps, you want to think of as kind of speed planning. So a way to say, based on what we know about you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, it's going to be really important for you to think about potentially some additional, savings toward retirement, or, potentially they're saving for a wedding for their child. It's going to go ahead and allow you to, again, based on the data we know about that client, really run some quick needs-based analysis reports to let them know what kind of changes or updates they might want to make to their plan, but in minutes instead of hours. That's really the benefit of the target maps. So Sean, thank you so much for jumping in and being my screen. That was great.
Yeah.
And we're really going to spend the rest of the time talking about our stencils and also our custom stencil that we have with visiWealth. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Sean, as he was really kind of the brains behind the operation of coming up with the Stencil Library. So you definitely deserve a shout out for that, Sean. And I'm going to pass it to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Alison. Appreciate you having me. Ross, thanks for joining us. It's been really cool for me to get to work with you and build this out. I think community is so beautiful, and now everyone in the visiWealth and the asset map community gets to benefit from this stencil. And that's really what we're going to showcase in terms of the call today. I'm a little bit biased in terms of stencils. I love them. I think they're phenomenal. They're such a great starting point. And if you think about financial clarity in general, it's complicated, right? We can start with 40 pages. We can start with so much context and dialogue, and how do we relate all of this to our clients in a way that is not overwhelming? In terms of what Alison mentioned, we can scale it, we can decrease the deliverables, and we can do it in a quick and digestible manner. And that's really what we can do with stencils. And even beyond that, that's really the focus of the visiWealth stencil, which is how can we take visual content and apply it to topics that are at times overwhelming, and be able to have that dialogue in a way that is going to stick and make sense, and that you can scale time and time again. So Ross is going to talk about the visiWealth stencil in general. What I'm going to do is show you how you can utilize the stencil with an existing client. You can utilize it to start as well, which is what Ross is going to touch on. But if you look at the visual in front of us, we've got Ben and Betsy. This is a not crazy complicated financial visual. Just to kind of orient everyone, if you haven't used Asset Map, I think most of the individuals have used Asset Map, but I've got their income over to the left on the left-hand side of the screen. I've got some insurance policies up at the top. I've got income over on the right. I've got joint accounts down below, and I've got some investment accounts over to the right as well as the left. So I've got a starting point, right? And if I bring this to any meeting, I could say, Ben, are we still making $100,000 a year? Have we upped our 401k contributions? What's the current value of the savings account? And we can have engaging conversations via the asset map. But this is where stencils become really powerful, because if I say Ben and Betsy, what else is missing that should be a part of your financial conversation? What conversations should we be having? I'm sure everyone on the line knows better than I do that those conversations are complicated, right? There's a lot. We're missing a lot. What should we be addressing? Where do we start? And that's the real bit of the benefit of stencils, is we can proactively frame those gaps in order to have really digestible conversations. The visiWealth stencil takes it even a step further of explaining those conversations, which we're going to show. So if you've not applied a stencil recently, no worries. Once I show this to you, you're going to apply it all the time, which is what the hope is moving forward. There's a couple ways you can do it. You're going to see this actions menu over to the left. Little tip in Asset Map, if you don't have this menu expanded, I'd recommend to expand it. That way you get used to the icons down the left-hand side of the screen. You're going to see this little actions menu. I like to use the right-click option. If you right-click on the Asset Map, it's going to bring up this quick actions menu. Keeps things really, really simple. And where you're going to see the option to apply a stencil is underneath this stencil section. Another term for stencil is a financial template. So we can apply a financial template on top of what we already have here. Previously, our advisors were requesting all these stencils over the past 2 years, and so we built them all into the application, and now we call it the public library. So when you go into apply stencil, you're going to see two options now. you're going to see my stencils, and you're also going to see public library. So if you have built custom stencils in the application, I've got some customs in my environment, traditional fact finder stencil, the Gen X stencil, those will show up within the My Stencil dropdown. Any other stencils that you've built within the application. Where we're going to focus our time during the conversation today is going to be within this public library. So if you don't know where to start, or maybe you work with military individuals, or you work with individuals who are millennials, or what we're going to touch on today is how do I start with the visiWealth stencil? We're going to be able to access that via the public library. So if you click into the public library and click on this drop down, you're going to notice that you've got access to multiple stencils. I think there's 25 up until this point. The easiest way to access the visiWealth stencil is just type in visiWealth. It'll automatically pop up within this section. You'll also notice within our stencils, within the public library, you can preview what's in each one of these stencils. So if I want to get an idea of what's in the traditional fact finder stencil before I actually apply it, I can preview it. You could do the exact same thing with the visiWealth stencil. Any other stencils that are available within the public library. The stencils that show up at the top, you can also copy them into your custom stencils. So if you've got questions on the stencil piece of the application, that's what my team is for. If you want to build out your own, if you want to talk about how you can use the visiWealth stencil moving forward, we've got a phenomenal support article on it. Just to kind of highlight our support team, we build everything into the support center, so you can access it all within everything there is to know about stencils is within this article. So I'm going to dive into the visiWealth stencil to kind of show you how you can really engage this client. Let's say for this conversation, I want to highlight some of the insurance policies. I don't have a great idea about their debt structure, and maybe I want to open up some of the conversation around additional retirement accounts. If you right click and go back into that apply stencil option, I'm going to click into the public library and I'm going to click this drop down. Most of our stencils were built so you have to apply the entire stencil, which is fine. It's going to give you a lot of placeholders and you can always delete from there. Ross did a great job of building this stencil out so that you can piece apart these conversations. Stencils are great, but they can be overwhelming, and maybe for this client, I want to have pointed conversations around certain topics. If you scroll down, or if you type in visiWealth, I'm going to select the visiWealth stencil. And if I go ahead and click on no next to apply stencil to entire household, what you're going to notice is it's going to give you the options of all of those topics within the stencil. So I can still apply all the topics to just one of the member. What Ross is going to show you is how you can start with the entire household, which is where you would select yes within this option right here. I'm going to select no, and I'm going to click on this drop down. And I'm going to scroll down, and let's go ahead and select the option for debt conversations. If I choose the option for debt conversations, I'm going to apply this to Ben. And when I click apply, what it's going to do is it's going to tee up all of these additional conversations. If I go back into that stencil option, click apply. Let me go back into the public library because I think I applied the wrong one real quick. I'm going to select no, click on this drop down. Oh, I did real estate conversations. That's my bad. Let's do debt conversations, click Ben, and click apply. What it's going to do is it's going to tee up those additional conversations at the top. Actually, that's my bad. Sorry about that. I keep applying the wrong one.
Third time's a charm with it.
Yeah, let's go back in.
That's right. You're just reinforcing how to do it over and over again.
And if you ever mess up like I do, you can just clear it out, and that's just via that right-click option. So if we go back,
by design, everyone, what can we say?
If we go back into the visiWealth partner stencil, if I click no, go down to this drop down, let's go ahead and do the insurance conversations. If I click apply stencil, what it's going to do is it's going to tee up that conversation within those topics. So you can see up at the top, I've got term life, I've got permanent life. All the content that is present within the visiWealth stencil, you'll notice we have this little emoji right here. It'll let you know all of the placeholders that have visiWealth content associated with it. So we still have some placeholders here that don't have visiWealth content that you can utilize as a placeholder. But if I click into term life, for example, and I go into the notes section, this is where all of that beneficial content is going to be. So you can click onto any of these placeholders right here. Like if I want to know the information about an eyelet, if I click on that link, it's going to open up that content directly without having to log into any other solution. It'll pull it up via a separate tab. And then from here, we can talk about the benefits associated with visual. I'm going to leave the expert to kind of talk about this in depth as Ross goes into each one of these sections. But all of those placeholders that are available within that visiWealth stencil that have that blue emoji next to it is going to have all of those hyperlinks that you can access directly within the application. Another piece to this stencil, we just applied this sleeve to this visual right here. If I only want to keep a couple of these placeholders from this, we can use that same search and select tool. And let's say I only want to keep life insurance or term life after I apply this sleeve. If I click on that delete option, I can keep that tile, delete out the other 3 so that I utilize that placeholder moving forward. I could do the same thing. If I go back into apply stencil, click into the public library, I want to go ahead and type in Visi within this section, partner stencil. I'm going to go back into no, and maybe this time around, I want to have income conversations, and let's apply this to Betsy. If I click apply, once again, we're going to take that sleeve, apply it to the other side of the equation. I've got a placeholder here for salary, additional income, rental income, Social Security, investment income. Again, if we click into any of these placeholders and go into the notes section, just a really beneficial way to have very engaging conversations in a really proactive manner. So you can drive the conversation around, I wanted to kind of tee up this conversation. I noticed that some of these placeholders were missing. And then as explaining that content, we can dive into the visiWealth visual all within a couple clicks. So just really proactive ways to tee those up. And before I transition and kick this over to Ross and kind of talk about the benefits of all the content within that visiWealth stencil, I did want to bring up the notes section when you're in a household. After you apply all of these stencils, whether you're just doing a piece of it or if you're applying the entire stencil, this is going to be the same for some of our other stencils as well. If you were to click into any of these tiles and go into the notes section, you'd be able to click on those hyperlinks. If you want to see all of the notes within one location so you can easily click on them, if you go into the notes section, you're going to go ahead and see all of that content within one location. So I've got some general notes within the application. You'll notice that emoji also shows up within the notes section. You can also include this within the report output that you generate for the client. So you can easily go into the content that's linked to each one of these topics, all within one location, utilize this within your meeting structure, just really beneficial ways to tee up those conversations. So I love stencils. I love the visiWealth stencil in terms of how you can piece out some of that content. It's one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've gotten across our advisor base thus far of utilizing this stencil specifically is there's gaps associated with my households. How do I tee up these conversations, but also how do I explain these conversations to my clients where the gaps are present? And this stencil is a home run in those situations. So, if you're thinking about, all right, I don't need to apply 40 different tiles to a household, but, what stencil is beneficial in opening up those gaps? This is a phenomenal stencil to use moving forward for that reason. So, Alison, wanted to kick it over to you. I know there might be some questions in the chat, but yeah, if we can kick it to Ross from here.
Perfect. And I love all those points. And, just even how we talk about getting to know your clients before they come in for that first meeting, or, through our discovery process, which I briefly mentioned, which is that direct client fact finder that helps you pre-build an asset map before they get into that meeting or, come into the office to see you, however you meet with them, whether it be virtually or in person. They might let you know that a certain topic is on their mind, something that that's really keeping them up at night, like, legacy or estate planning or, saving money on taxes or, whatever the topic might be. And just the clear use case to then add a visiWealth stencil that reflects what they want to talk about in that meeting is, to Sean's point, just an absolute home run. So a couple questions are coming in, but I think that's fine. We can transition over to Ross and then do Q&A. And I do see we have a hand raised. So Jean-Pierre, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but please go ahead and type your question in the chat and in the Q&A, and we'll absolutely get to that in just a couple minutes. But Ross, you're up. Tell us more about your content library and how it's valuable.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, guys. I will be minimally additive to what Sean added because he covered so much great stuff. And this is, one of my favorite audiences to talk to because I don't have to spend virtually any time talking about the importance of using visuals because you all get it. That's what asset map is about. It's about really consolidating things down into one page that makes it more manageable and allows you to drive just more engaging conversations with clients. So what I have pulled up here, a lot of you may be wondering, well, what the heck is even visiWealth? So I'm going to do the shortest overview of it. We create visuals that simplify complex topics. That's it. Something I've been doing for the better part of the past decade is both a CPA, financial planner, building CFP education programs and running them at the American College of Financial Services, and now acting as Chief Learning Officer at the Investments and Wealth Institute. One thing has remained constant, whether I've engaged working with clients, teaching traditional college age students, or speaking at conferences with advisors who have been in business for 20, 30 years. People like visuals. Using effective visuals is the best way to communicate and simplify complex information. So that's what we're doing at visiWealth. We're building these one-page deliverables. Just popping into the content library here, we really do it in 3 different ways, 3 different deliverables. We have concept presentations, which you may have seen these online. These are basically just one-page PDFs. Then we have key takeaways, which these are just the written backend. This is for if you're not familiar with a concept, you haven't seen it too often, you need a refresher. You can go in and read up on what's going on in that visual. And what I'm most excited about and what is actually featured that Sean showed you in the stencil are concept presentations. So these are those same things, but in PowerPoint format. So if I go back to the asset map, this is the this is kind of the overwhelming side of things that Sean smartly didn't show you, but this is the entire stencil applied. So you can kind of see just the vastness of how many different categories we have content that pertains to. And what we did was we also broke it out by different conversations, right? So basically going in here, this gives you a sense of, okay, what's in the library, what's in the stencil, but then you can actually select specific things. So, hey, if you're working conversation with the dependent, a child, a grandchild of a client, these are some things that may be worth bringing up, maybe around the college icon here. If I go to the notes section, if you're working with any families or clients right now, you know parents are stressing out going through the financial aid process. You have delays in the FAFSA becoming available. You have delays in information getting to schools. Parents and families are freaking out because they're going to be getting financial aid award letters months later, and they're going to have a compressed timeline for when they actually have to make a decision. So here's an example of one of, hey, public versus private college financial aid distribution comparison. If I click on this, it pulls this up. So then I can actually have a conversation with a client and talk about, hey, we know it's scary, but guess what? Here's how financial aid distribution works at these different schools, of what happens earlier in the process. A lot of families are scared by sticker prices of colleges, but this actually helps show that, hey, even though a school that costs $65,000 sticker price, and we actually apply the financial aid formula in this type of general example, you can see that the true cost of the school is more like $5,000 difference. So it provides clarity during a period of uncertainty for clients. So that's just one example. But the really cool thing about these is if you're looking at this, I know what you're saying. You probably caught 5% of what I just said. You're looking at this saying there's a ton of stuff going on here. Even though we have simplified and consolidated things down to one visual, there's still a lot going on. So that's why with these concept presentations, we've actually put them in PowerPoint format where we're actually have the animations built in. So me as an advisor, I can walk you through and say, hey, cost of attendance at a public school versus a private school. Student aid index, this is what's determined after you fill out the FAFSA, right? So we can actually walk clients through and control their attention on just one slide. And the beauty of this is just one concept, but you could spend 15 minutes, you could spend an hour with a client going through something like this. That's the beauty of it. Instead of going through huge slide decks with them, as Alison mentioned before, of getting away from 70, 80-page reports, where what happens in your brain is when you move from one page to the next, there's an automatic disconnect. There's an automatic relearning, a reset. So the longer you can keep people on one page, the longer you can capture their attention, the more they're gonna better understand what you're talking about. It's going to resonate with them, and they're really going to be focused on you. And that is kind of one of the keys of what we're doing at visiWealth here is we are building advisor-driven, client-focused visuals. So these are not meant for you to just send to a client. You can definitely send them to a client, but they're really meant for you to use them in conversations with a client. So it focuses on your ability to communicate very complex concepts so they see you are the real value add, and you use tools to amplify the advice you deliver. If I pop over here, income conversations, if we pop into, let's see, Self-employment income, right? So here's a visual here on Social Security and Medicare taxes, right? So be able to pull this up and having conversations on that of, hey, maybe a client is considering becoming self-employed. What do they have to know from that exposure perspective? Here's a cool example of, well, what happens if you have clients you're working with that have multiple, two spouses, they're both running their own businesses. Like, how does self-employment tax work there? And then here's another scenario they could talk about that it's become very common of people switching jobs, right? Something very common. Hey, you switch jobs, you end up overpaying Social Security tax. You may actually get a credit back at the end of the day. So these are specific examples, but or they're general examples, but you can provide tailored advice around them. Even if it's something that's not relevant to the client right now, it gets them thinking and it shows them that you are being proactive should something like this occur, that they're going to remember, oh yeah, I remember Ross showed me something about switching jobs. I'm actually thinking about switching jobs. So now I have something to remember that by. If I come around here to expense conversations, one of the biggest expenses we all have on an annual basis is paying income taxes. So this is a big one, going into federal taxes, saying, well, what do we have? Well, we could talk about tax-related inflation adjustments, having that conversation, how tax credits work, tax credit sequencing, alternative minimum tax credits, especially if you're working with clients that are getting stock options and are likely to be subject to an AMT still. Then even marginal versus effective tax rates, right? Being able to pull this up and actually go through and talk about, well, here's the difference between what a marginal tax rate is. Here's the effective tax rate is calculated with some general examples and walking clients kind of through this. It makes taxes really evoke three emotions in people. It's anger, confusion, and fear. So they're able to talk to clients about something that's so important to them, or they're afraid of, or they're really concerned about, and you simplify it for them, helps build trust with them. Retirement conversations, being able to come in here, we've, all, like Sean showed before, your client may not have all of these, but we've kind of, we've populated these icons with different visuals that may be of relevance. Roth IRA, right? A lot of conversations with advisors around doing conversion. So being able to pull something up of, hey, doing a conversion. Well, maybe something a little bit more detailed is if you have clients who have other IRAs with pre-tax dollars in, well, how does the pro rata rule work here, right? Being able to go through an example. So that was one of the original intentions we did with visiWealth, is we wanted to basically provide a just-in-time advice library of, hey, if a prospect comes in and they have a question, instead of me defaulting to, hey, fill out a long form questionnaire, give me all this personal information, you don't know me, you don't trust me, let me demonstrate how I can educate you. Let me put on the educator, the teacher hat here and explain something to you, because that builds trust right away. And then later on, when you're a client, we gather your data, we put it in the map, we actually go through, do our analysis. That's when we can actually provide very detailed, personalized advice. But you don't need it up front all the time. And it saves you a lot of time doing that as well. Last one, real estate conversations, right? So coming in here to the home, maybe you have somebody that's saying, hey, look, interest rates are maybe going to tick down. Maybe the housing market where I live is cooling off. Like, I'm still thinking, am I going to sell my home? Oh, well, prices have appreciated during the pandemic. I'm going to have a big gain. Well, maybe that's something I don't actually have to worry about because there's a gain exclusion. So let me go through a general example that actually explains that to you. So these are just some examples of all these things. Debt conversations as well, or especially around student loans. A lot of things here, even on how to calculate all the different repayment plans and even more timely things that are coming up. And a big one that we released more recently is around business owner conversations. So when you have somebody, hey, they may just be a single member LLC, but here's other things for them to think about. What are the tax planning considerations of choosing a business entity? Social Security and Medicare, like we talked about before. What about selling a business? What about this beneficial ownership reporting? This is something I remember I shared this with Adam a month or two ago when we built it, because the beneficial ownership reporting is something that most advisors have no idea about. 99% of individuals and business owners have no idea about. And the best resource you have is a 57-page document from the Financial Crimes Network. It's like, you're not going to send that to a client, but maybe I could pull up this one visual, right? And I can go through this to see, well, who has to report? Okay, yeah, I'm one of these. Well, who's a beneficial owner? And so we're just providing these simplified these opportunities to really simplify and communicate complex things to clients. This isn't meant to answer everything, but it gets the conversation going. It allows you to be proactive. And I don't know if any of you caught what I just did, but I just went through 7 visuals, which it's very possible those 7 things could apply to the majority of your clients. That's 7 conversations. Those are 7 touch points. That may be double what you do already with a client. If you only meet quarterly, or you're only talking about, reviewing portfolios and investment returns and rebalancing. But those are things that were 7 slides, right? So we kind of think about and get overwhelmed of, hey, if I'm going to meet with a client or doing an educational event, I have to have a 20 or 30 slide deck. No, you don't. Like that, you can literally build out every month different touch points of using this type of material in an engaging manner. And what I alluded to before when I showed the library is it's also very likely that there are topics we cover that you've never seen before, or you just haven't seen in a while, and you don't see them that often, so you need a refresher. So that is the benefit of individuals that also want to subscribe to visiWealth, to be able to get that additional information. Let me read the key takeaways. Let me actually co-brand the concept visual and put it out there in my social network, use it in a blog or whatever. But this is a no-brainer to kind of work with the asset map team to build a stencil, to integrate it this way, because there's just so many opportunities right here to engage beyond the map in a visual manner with clients. I will pause there.
That is great stuff. We have some questions rolling in, which I'm really excited about. Some really thoughtful questions. And, Ross, even just what you ended with just around business owners. I mean, that is probably the most popular niche out there. I mean, when you're talking to advisors, so many folks own businesses, of course, and run their own businesses and have so many questions on things like that. So, I mean, that stencil alone is just going to provide so much value to folks that are working with business owners. I haven't seen that one yet. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, 100. No, you're totally right. And I mean, and this is a good one where a lot of these also have multi-purpose and multi-use as well, right? So this is a good one where if you're an advisor, like I would take this and be sending this to all your attorney contacts and all your CPA contacts and people working at banking, anybody setting up a business checking account. Like these are people that need to actually know about this, or they can distill the information. They're going to remember you sent it to them. What they don't want is they don't want you sending them, a 30-page PDF or a white paper. That's all advisor jargon that they then still have to do homework to figure out how to distill it to their own audience. So multiple uses, not only with your clients, but also with your, centers of influence and other people on the advisory team.
I agree. Well, we're going to get to some questions. I think they'll really value everyone and finding out a little bit more about these items. First, I'm going to start with a really cool comment that we got. Not only is visiWealth great for educating clients, but imagine how it's great for educating staff who are maybe still learning the industry, paraplanners, folks looking to become advisors when they're working on a staff with a financial professional. And also using asset map in conjunction to do really good, effective fact finding. What a great point. So, these stencils and these pieces of education and information, these visuals and the asset map report are all great for internal use as well. I thought that was a really thoughtful comment.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And that's what we find. We are finding all these different use cases, right? Like the internal education, using a couple like I referenced before in your own client education events. Like that was actually one of the first use cases we had. Was we worked with a CPA firm when a couple of years ago there was a big cost of living adjustment for Social Security benefits, yet clients were calling in because their checks were smaller and people were freaking out. So we actually did a visual on that on Irma and explaining it, and that CPA firm looked at their client list, identified the 40 clients that applied to, and then they did an education event. So that saved having 40 separate 15 to 20-minute phone calls to explain, well, your income was higher 2 years ago, therefore your Medicare costs went up, and that's why your net monthly checks are less. So there's definitely a lot of use cases there. The internal education is big. And then another thing we do that I didn't mention is we're also, when we started, the main thing was let's simplify the very complicated things. But what we also find is there's a lot of more simple, or maybe they're not simple, but they're more available concepts or planning pieces that are out there that the advisor community still wants, because they like the way we design things. They want that consistency, right? That's the beauty of this map, right? Is you get comfortable as an advisor using the tool, and your clients get comfortable. Therefore, you can spend more time engaging versus building other add-ons and tools and things like that. So whether it's Silicon Valley bank collapse and people questioning FDIC insurance, we built something on that. Beneficial ownership reporting, we built something on that. Dave Ramsey talking about an 8% rule instead of a 4% rule. Like we have a visual on 4% rule. So like we're building other timely things. So it allows an advisor to stay front of mind, because that's also what you're competing against too. It's people watching people on TikTok and other videos where they're using quick content too, but it's not academically sound. It's not vetted in most cases. So you also need to be able to compete with how are you going to capture the attention of your clients and prospects in a real thoughtful way that highlights you. So just a couple other examples there.
I love that. Quality content that's quick, not just someone winging it, I think is super, super important. Let's stick with Ross for a minute. We'll start out with some questions for you and visiWealth, and then we'll jump around. We'll get compliance and FINRA out of the way. So a couple questions came up about how can we pre-qualify visiWealth visuals with our broker dealers, or should we download them and submit to compliance department? And on top of that, have you run anything by compliance departments as far as the content and or FINRA?
Yeah, good question. So we have not gone through that. We're happy. Definitely reach out to me afterwards, connect with me. We could definitely deliver previews, whatever it needs to be to go through compliance departments with that. We haven't gone through that process because a lot of what we've done like initially was on the advisor education, internal use only type of thing. And also I think that's the big piece here too, is being able to, not that it frees you from any compliance burdens, but like we're really trying to focus on using this content when you're sitting down with a client, not necessarily using it in marketing content, anything that's going out publicly, like in that manner, or even directly to clients, or being able to incorporate it into other existing decks for which you are submitting for compliance review.
Mm-hmm.
So happy to discuss that afterwards. And, that's something that we're open to doing, especially on bigger, with bigger relationships. If you're working at a company that has a lot of advisors that could benefit from this, either internally or use, we're willing to work on the visuals, edit things, make those changes so they do get approved for compliance, so you can actually use them in conversations. But our main focus is the education. Like we want to make sure the advisors know what they're talking about. We're providing tools so that they can better engage. And then look, in some cases, like it's rare, but at least it's giving you ideas. That's the other part too, is you may be somebody who you love doing visuals. Like when Sean was drawing on the map, I love that. And that's the one thing I really encourage, is that you need to be using visuals. So whether you are drawing on the map here, you're writing on a whiteboard, using a yellow pad, you still need to do that. That's really effective. It's just not scalable all of the time. Like you're not going to draw, I don't know, you're not going to draw how a complex trust structure like an IDGIT or a slat works on a board, take a picture of it, and then you send it to the next client. So it's being able to use those general examples. But that's also one of the good things with our content, that we're not, we're not acting as like another fintech platform. Like we're complementary. Like we're not collecting personal anything. It's a general example that you can use. So that's a long-winded answer to that response to that question, but no, reach out to me afterwards. We could talk about getting them approved for compliance purposes.
I think that was a perfect answer. And I work with a lot of compliance departments, and you hit the nail on the head. So I think that was perfect. Hey, Sean, what's a good way to introduce Asset Map to existing clients? Prepare a preliminary report based on what you already know, potentially then leading to a discussion, and then kind of filling it out together. Any best practices on getting existing clients up and running on Asset Map?
Yeah, it's a great question. Alison, can you see my screen on
Sure
your
can.
side? Awesome. We do have some great marketing material that goes with the discovery interview. So discovery is a great starting point with prospect clients, kind of gives them an idea, gives us an idea of what their current financial situation might look like, and then we can apply a stencil on top of it. So kind of framing it, we've got a video that kind of walks them through what we're doing via this organizing phase. To Ross's point though, you can also start with a stencil. So you could add a household into the application, start with a stencil, fill out the information that you know, and kind of frame it. Adam uses this term all the time. I took the liberty of building an asset map for you. And in doing so, I noticed that there's some gaps or some areas that I address with your peers, other individuals in a similar financial situation. Let's go through this together. It basically gives you permission to talk about the rest of their financial situation, which is, the benefit of stencils in general is you kind of make the client feel known, right? This could be a part of my financial situation. I see it in individuals around me. Let's have the conversation moving forward. So just two small ideas, but both easy to do within the application.
I love that. It's an unassuming way to get the conversation going without someone feeling like they don't have everything they need to have. It's a way to, kind of give suggestions in a very, kind of friendly way that's not making someone feel judged. So I couldn't agree more, and I think that's fantastic. So I'm not 100% sure. I think this might be an Asset Map question, but are we able to see, meaning can the attendees and can advisors see what the surveys and questionnaires look like? I think they're referencing discovery, Sean. So that direct client fact finder, absolutely. So I don't know if you want to jump in there, Sean, but yeah,
Yeah.
you're able to walk through that process yourself, to kind of check it out. You're able to do it with a client in person. There's lots of options, but I'll let Sean show you real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're logged into the application, if you click on Launch Discovery in the bottom middle of the screen, it'll bring you to this Discovery Overview page. So depending upon your subscription type, you could have inbound or outbound. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation to kind of show you the details associated with it. Easy way to get in touch with my team is you can just use this chat icon in the upper right-hand corner. But this is that discovery interview link that you can walk the client through as a starting point. So we'd love to show it to you. In terms of questionnaires, that is a elite subscription feature. So you can add questionnaires into the application. You can put it on the back end of discovery. Again, we'd be more than happy to talk to you all about the details associated with that. Feel free to reach out to our team if you want to get additional details around it.
One of my favorite parts of Asset Map is the discovery tool. I think it's a no-brainer, especially for folks who are new to Asset Map and just getting maps built out, or if you're prospecting, a total non-brainer. It's really a phenomenal way to find out more about folks that might want to work with you. And we have advisors who are using Asset Map that if their clients don't kind of get started with that discovery questionnaire, they might not even move on with that relationship because they love the fact that the client is able to have a little skin in the game and do a little bit of homework to make that first meeting and to make the relationship valuable right from the start. So it's a great way to gather data.
Hey, Allison, I
Yeah.
just wanted to jump in on that, what you talked about before of using also the stencil as a starting point. I think that's valuable too, especially with the visiWealth stencil, because it does a couple things. It shows all these different conversations that you can have in the future, provides an opportunity for you to demonstrate your expertise there. But it's also up to you as the advisor to make it not overwhelming for the client, right? So what I found is successful in using it is being able to not only pull up ones that answer some of their specific questions, because every prospect has very specific questions. I've rarely encountered anyone that's ever come in and been like, I want a plan set up and I need to do these specific goals and I want to be very organized. It's like, my kid's going to school in the fall. We haven't saved anything. So what do we do? Or like, how do we fill out this form? So to be able to answer specific questions, but then be able to show and say, hey, look, see all these dots are like, there's other things here that if you like the way I deliver content here, here's other things that we're going to be able to answer those questions that you're going to have in the future when the time is right. It's not right now. And I think that's also our tendency is to overwhelm and let me show how smart I am and let me go through 50 things. It's like, do one thing and then show them the map. And then what you actually may get out of clients is they may remember that and look at it and go, oh, I noticed you had something here on cryptocurrency. Like I actually had a question on that. Now you actually have a two-way conversation, a dialogue going back and forth. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
great.
That's a great point. Well, while you're at it, Ross, I have a question for you. So a really great question. I actually was wondering myself, you have so much great content, educational content in visiWealth. What's kind of your cadence of adding new topics and just a little folks that are curious about, kind of what might be coming and how often you kind of revisit what you might need to add in there.
Yeah, great question. So we're always doing two different things. We're always making sure the existing content library is up to date and accurate and timely. And so we break things out in a couple different ways. There's some topics that, look, these are always going to get updated on an annual basis. Usually anything related to tax inflation figures get changed. Then we have stuff that's maybe more bi-month or biannually. So like I-bonds, for example, when those rates get set, that's a biannual one. Then we have things that are going to be more quarterly. So such as more complicated estate planning like CRATs and CLATs and SLATs and those other things that rely on the IRC 7520 rates for which you can use either the current month or the previous 2 months. We're trying to do that quarterly. So we're always trying to make sure you have the most up-to-date content. As far as new content, our goal is we're trying to do 2 to 4 every month coming out. So we're trying to get close to that cadence of, about one a week, even though they usually release towards the end of the month. The couple that we have that are getting ready to be released probably in the next couple of days, backdoor Roth strategy, 1031 exchanges. And then another interesting one that kind of came out of nowhere, but actually is popular and it piqued my interest too, is about CDs. of getting a CD from a bank versus getting a brokered CD through an advisor. So that's something, especially if you're working with older clients and they're scared of what's going on. A lot of people are still in that mindset of, oh, I'm getting, I read the newspaper still, and here's the local bank advertising a CD. So being able to kind of go through, have those conversations with clients. And then we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline related to crypto. So that's been in the works. We have one up there now, but like we're working on other ones of just around, basics of blockchain. Where do you actually hold? What's the difference between hold crypto on an exchange versus in a wallet? What are estate planning considerations? So those are things that are very complex and complicated, and that space is exploding rather quickly, and access to being able to invest in those, obviously through Bitcoin ETFs, and even seeing allocations within target date funds and other funds that like Fidelity, for example. We need to get that content education into the hands of advisors so they can use to have better conversations with clients.
Very good. Thank you so much. That's helpful and exciting stuff on the horizon as well. I think this one is for Asset Map. So are we able to see an archive of charts or something specific from a month to month or a quarterly basis, almost like a timeline, kind of like when you go to the doctor and they take a blood test or blood pressure and you want to compare 6 months ago to current, what's the best way to get things archived in Asset Map, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would get in the habit of generating a report at the end of a meeting, whether you're going to show it to them in that meeting or not. If you go to the household overview page, you're going to see this section over to the right for reports. It will keep track of a rolling 30 days. If you're on the professional subscription, if you're on our elite subscription, it'll give you unlimited report history. So get in the habit of saving the asset map report. Every time that you meet with the client, you can easily just go into the report section, click generate report, because that way, if you change it during that next 6-month period, you'll have that archive folder. Benefit of the elite subscription with asset map is we keep track of it in application. So again, feel free to reach out to us if you've got questions around that. But best practice is to generate the report.
Great point. So if anybody else has, I have a couple more questions to get to, but I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask any final questions. So feel free to type them in as we tackle these last couple. More of a comment than a question. And we covered this in the beginning, but thank you so much, Leah, in this case. Can we get a copy of this recording to revisit later? There's so much good information, and I will need to watch it again to pull some more information out. And the answer is, of course, we always record our webinars here at Asset Map, and we'd be happy to share that with you to go back and pull out your favorite parts to implement. So thank you so much for that question and comment. Sean, some maps include a lot of items. So if you have a household, or maybe you've used a lot of the visiWealth stencil, what's the best way to kind of print? Or is it better in a case of a very long, complex household to just use it over Zoom? Any best practices on, kind of maximizing print capabilities?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you can consolidate in terms of asset map. Like, let's say you've got a client that owns 7 different investment properties. You can add one tile and title it as, total investment properties. Go into the notes section and detail that out. Same thing in terms of expenses, same thing in terms of some of these additional accounts. Now, some accounts you want to list them off as their individual tile, but I would consolidate where you can in terms of the visual. In terms of asset map, though, in a lot of situations, if you have multiple members up at the top, if you have multiple entities up at the top as well, that's where our layouts feature comes into play. So you can create a one-page visual for the business, a one-page visual for the trust, a one-page visual for the dependents. Feel free to reach out to us, see if you want to walk through some of those details. But in terms of the report output, if you have a situation where there's a lot, there's easy ways within the application that we can make it a bit more digestible. In application, if you've got it sleeved out in terms of those additional members or entities up at the top, you can easily toggle in between those members to show different sections. So in a lot of situation, I see it as being pretty manageable.
Perfect. Yeah, Sean brings up a great point too. Our customer support team is fantastic. They're going to really help you, figure out what's the best scenario for your meetings and to make sure that this really sings for you as a technology. So I think we have one more, and I can probably tackle this one myself. So it's really interesting, and you bring up a good point. Please tell us about other integrations you have. So the visiWealth stencil is really kind of in the best way possible, not an integration, but we've built it right in to Asset Map through the kind of static evergreen links that Ross has built into visiWealth, and it allows us to be really quick and make those kind of changes on the fly. Whereas, when you're doing development work, it can take a long time to keep things up to date. So it's really in the best way possible, these stencils and the creativity we've done with visiWealth to live in the Asset Map platform. It very much seems like an integration, but it's something that we can work on and keep up to date relatively quickly. So that's exciting. But in addition to our great visiWealth relationship, yes, we do have integrations, data coming in from other places like Nitrogen, Orion, where I think as of today, we launched an Adapar integration. That's a brand new one. Sneak peek for those on the call today, that's going live this week, which is very exciting. Of course, you mentioned in the question Redtail. Redtail is going to bring in all your contact information that you have living there, along with financials. And the list goes on. I think we have between 12 and 15 integrations now that are going to help you save time, get data to really work for you that might be living in other places, and get some updated values in the asset map as well. So that's a topic I absolutely love talking about, and our customer support team, not to keep shouting them out, are very well versed in how the integrations can work for you and best practices around that. So yeah, there's lots of ways to kind of make sure you're not doing a bunch of duplicate efforts in different platforms, and we have some great integrations to support that. So you can always even hit up our website, and it lists out all of those great integrations partners we have, and some of the value to those. So Ross, if you wouldn't mind, as we close out, would you be able to pull up the landing page we have for visiWealth and Asset Map?
Sure. Well, this is also one of the main pages on basically visiwealth.org as well. And then even under advisor solutions, like we have it pretty front and center. If you scroll down here, you'll see some other testimonials. And these are great too, because these actually, we're kind of showing what are the visuals that these people are even talking about that they use to have success with clients. But if you scroll down, like this is the offer we're doing. It's heavily discounted. It's already low price to begin with, but it's for $195 a year, getting access to the visiWealth platform. So the beauty is everything we've showed, that's all included already, like actually built in. If you only want to use that, totally fine. But if you want to get access to concept visuals, be able to co-brand them, send them to clients, you see the key takeaways, participate in our community platform where we do office hours, visual insights, some other things, brainstorm, that's kind of what you get for that low price per advisor.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. So Sean, would you mind typing in the chat as we close out a way that folks could get in touch with the Asset Map, whether they either want to get subscribed or ask any questions? You probably know best the most effective way to hit us up, and of course on the website as well. And Ross, if you have any kind of other than your website, a great way to get in touch with you, feel free.
Sure, I'll throw that in the chat.
Sounds great. Well, thank you everyone so much for your wonderful questions today. It's always a pleasure presenting with Ross and Sean, and I'm so glad you all were able to join us today. Again, this session was recorded, and we are happy to get that out to anybody who registered, attended, or couldn't make it. So that will be living on the Asset Map website in the webinars section, and we usually get that loaded up in just a day or two. So thanks again, and please feel free to reach out to us, either Ross, myself, or Sean, if you have any additional questions. We're happy to chat with you.
Yeah, and if you have suggestions for new visuals, we're always open to those too. Send them over.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Any final word?
No, yeah. If you've got questions on how to use the stencil, applying it, best practices that we've seen across our advisor community, reach out to me specifically, to my team. We'd love to have the conversation.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yep. Appreciate it. Thanks all.